Yeah, so I'll go back a little and give some background on this novella. Um, let's see. So, 2020, what was going on there? Well, I went to Grady Memorial Hospital. I read Don Miguel Cervantes. Uh, what's it called? Don Miguel Cervantes. Uh, that movie with Terry Gilliam with Sancho Palooza. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's 900 pages. That summer, before January through March, basically, to finish my novella. And then in January, I was so confident, I was such a drunk, I went to rehab in Grady Memorial Hospital on the 12th floor. The 12th floor um, was tough to get in. I watched The Machinist with Christian Bale. And then I took an Uber there and they took my blood and I was there for about 24 hours. Um, there were homeless people there. There were doctors there. Um, there there was a tall 7 footer. Um, I think his name's Victor. And Tyrese Halliburton might have been there. Halliburton's that company that went under. So it was never about. I wasn't method acting playing basketball. I wasn't out there trying to find characters like I usually am. A lot of the girls are composite characters of females that I've known through the years. Some of the guys are too, but not really. Tom's kind of Oren. But I was in Polsky Center. I taught that class. I got the honorable mention in 2017. So this is 3 years later. Um, I brought my Monstrous Gremlin athletic bag to New York. So after school, they go to New York. Malachi drove his Ford Taurus station wagon off the map, and I stayed with Tony Kreutzer and his girlfriend, Marianne, in Hell's Kitchen. We watched Where I Did Live. We watched World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. I remember before the Olympics, the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, and MTV, television colored in an ancient margin. A docility of balance reanimated the ambivalence of nocturnal maneuvers. Technology was worn on the hip. A decker of ostentationists survived from somewhere else. The walk from Turtle Bay to Union Station was marred, 31st and First Avenue to 42nd was marred by jarring prospects, moments I'd forgot to be still. In a city heralded, you know, um, he ralded, ribald. It means bald. Ribald means fun, but Abraham Lincoln's favorite book, one of his favorite words right now is imbue, to imbue. As the glory of man, the public opinion, quenched of thirst, dried of exhaustion, and still led me to corner shops, flooring stores, and glassware companies, and painted scarfs decorated surplus. Their samples were automatic and exchanged my age, weights and rubrics, detailed synthesis. In the evening, lines outside of bread stores reached the curb as actors held cups of coffee, both hands and a finger below around bike wraps, while tourists took photographs. This is called realism. The stranger's name was went forth and round. The lightning struck yellow and white. Eventually, both the moon and the sun changed places, such that red sunspots were accompanied by dangerous glances. A grass, blades of grass blowing in the wind. Men tanked their luster and hoisted their flags. The banking industry congealed. That's the realist position. The art gallery spared itself. Everyone learned how to make sushi. Their suit survived an emblem for martial law. In an interview, I squeaked together a circuit for the vice president, Ricky's uncle. I looked from his office window to the crowd at Times Square. Splurges of paints, oxidized symbol curiosity, wads of money, camp behind. Oops. Um, Here we go. Gold buckles, brown leather, silver purses, and bright pumps hung above, chiseling, scraping, sidewinding a chandelier. The Chrysler Tower, not Tyson Chandler. Women wore long, frayed dresses, laminal bulls, stray horns, a spaceship to Mars. This wooden pin that hurdled all the sands of time, but those small sidewalk breaks, too grim, hard to wake, and all the footsteps of all 6 million people in New York City could clamor in harmony. My guess is there's 20 million people, 25 million people. Dinner awaited. I shot pool at a bar called Steinway in Washington Heights. The bartenders were female and wore ties and neon shoes. A streak of white light fell on the square bar. Past the bar and behind the pub seating, again a knotty wood window hid a small room with a high ceiling and floral sconces and candles. Customers stopped in for an earthly drink. My guess is this kind of model for writing is done, is dead. God is dead here. Late one night at 2 a.m., after a lady scratching lottery tickets folded and a fellow minding a pair of dice capitulated, I looked behind me searching for a shadow. Someone writing in a notebook in a late bloom, or a couple back in a city after a trip abroad. People were happy in New York City when they returned. That's why the postcards of world exhibitions during World War II and the Brooklyn piers stayed popular. Scratched faces, ungodly umbrellas, and rain boots. At the bar, two of my friends maintained, pounding their fists, holding the other by his shoulder. They abraded, and the bartender, Janine Gable, who came around and sat next to me. A narrow hallway with two bathrooms wielded a third room. A wall papered with square with the jukebox in the middle, speakers in the corners, lamps on the tables, and a garment rack with hangers. Despite the regular popularity of Steinway and the retreat uptown after an evening show at Times Square, there were only a handful of people, colored sea green and oyster in the overgrown buzz cuts and leather jackets, long hair parted to one side, metal flasks for tumbleweed. They disposed of the city's comforts, growing toward enchantment, whistling silently, pointing with David Bowie, spinning in circles. Janine had big brown eyes, deep lines on her forehead. You can't have this. You can't have long hair parted to one side or deep lines. You can't have a Harley Dickinson, right? Unless you can, and that's the law. Creases behind her eyes and cheeks were plumed. She wore a beige button cardigan, and heads of serpents pulled on braided pigtails. Boy, do you guys feel obligated, she said. We're terrified of being blamed, I said. What do you do? She said, folding her legs. Look at them, I said, acts of novelty. One was hunched, the weight of the world on his shoulders, his forehead almost to the bar as if he were an unraveling bandage. The character from a book by Faulkner. The other's eyes were closed, one hand extended, his hand open. It's too late. And I remember when I was doing my thesis, the professor said in front of the class on my last day, he said, "Well, what is the challenge, to antiquity?" And I said, Platoism, platonic love. So, what is platonic love? And platonic love is when men love women, but not really, only as friend. And women tempt men, and that's the starving artist. But what do men do to women? And that's where I am today. And then also, he said, "Well, what's the positive? What's your style?" And I said, "It's Eminem." And he said, "No, what's seriously your style?" So I said, "It's called Technicia, Greek Technicia. I weave reality with research, with fiction, and so much." His eyebrows raised for a split second in a glimmer. "I used to know this lifeguard."